Hi there everyone, thank you for joining our session today on Nintex DocGen for Salesforce. My name is William Sandy, I'm on the marketing team here in our London office. Alongside me I have Thomas Clark and Palesa Sequani. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi guys, my name's Tom Clark. I've been working in Nintex for just over 3 years, working as both a technical evangelist and a support engineer across ecosystems such as SharePoint and Salesforce.
Hi, my name is Palesa Sequani, working as a technical evangelist for Nintex. Been working with the platform for about 7 years, 2 years with Nintex, and I cover Southwest, East and Central Africa as well as Israel, and I'm excited to be here.
Cool, thanks guys. So before we dive into the content, just run through the housekeeping and the agenda. So as usual, attendees of this webinar will be muted and recorded as well and emailed to you in the coming days. Please post any questions you have in the chat, and we'll pick the questions up as we go in between slides or answer them at the end. And please take 2 minutes at the end of the webinar to fill out our survey. And onto the agenda, so what you can expect in today's session. So what is DocGen? How does it work? And specifically, we'll do kind of a dive into how does DocGen for Salesforce specifically work? Who's using it? So we'll do some customer case studies and use cases. And then Tom and Palesa will run us through the demo later. And we'll take time at the end to take some Q&A. So with that, what I want to do first, just before we go into the content, I want to run a quick poll to get a gauge of our audience here and your familiarity with Nintex DocGen for Salesforce or document generation in general. So I'll just launch this poll and give everyone 30 seconds. Cool. So are you an expert? Are you familiar with it? Or you know other document generation products? You get the concept and want to know more? Or you don't know how you ended up here? Okay, thank you everyone, that's great. So a mix actually, so we've got a few experts, a few people that are familiar, and then we've got some people that want to know more, so a good mix. Okay, so let's dive into the slides and start off with a kind of top level overview of document generation. So what is it? It's data driven, so it cuts out the need for manual document creation, as per the name, drawing on the data that you already have in your Salesforce environment or any other external source, such as Apex, ServiceMax, for example, and putting it into familiar document templates. So think contracts, order forms, service documents, for example, in the same formats such as Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF, etc., that you already use today. And that's in any delivery as well. So out the box, you can download the finished document, email into your document queue, content library, and then third-party integrations as well. So e-signature, for example, Adobe Sign, and it can go into your storage. So cloud storage, for example, Box, O365, etc. And perhaps most importantly, this keeps everything compliant. So your document templates are fully customizable within our tool. This means you're producing consistently correct documents, and that's vitally important. So the correct T's and C's, contract terms, and just the general details for your clients, perhaps the correct quote numbers, for example, that all needs to be correct every single time to keep your document legally compliant. No human errors make it in. So with that, let's take a deeper dive into how Nintex DocGen for Salesforce actually works with Palesa.
Thanks, William, for that. So probably just to give you guys some context around this, how document generation works is that it's a service that we provide on Nintex across multiple ecosystems like your SharePoint, Box, OneDrive for Business, and so forth. And then even though this works across multiple ecosystems, the process is pretty much similar. So the first thing you need to is gather your data. So That step is quite important because remember your data could sit in any of those ecosystems or even in other systems as well. But irrespective of that, you can go ahead and access that data. The second step that you take with document generation is to create and tag your templates. So when you talk about a template, I like to describe it as a sample document that already has some details in place which can be adapted or changed or automated in some instances. So for example, you could have static content like terms and conditions, or you could have dynamic content such as the mailing address that the document is addressed to, or maybe things like repeating tables where you've got maybe a list of products as well as their quantities. And then just to talk about the templates as well quickly, our templates span across your popular Office products. So a template could be either in Word, Excel, or PowerPoint. The third thing that you need to do is go ahead and add your conditions and rules. So how I like to explain that is with regards to conditions and rules, you typically ask yourself, well, if my final document is addressed to somebody that lives in Washington, should I include any clauses that relate to that location, for example? And then the last thing that you'll have to do with document generation is to plan for delivery. So we give you the capability to either take that generated document, save it on an online repository such as Dropbox or maybe OneDrive, and you also have the ability to use some of our connectors like Adobe Sign, where you can take that same document and set it off to external people in your organization for digital signing. And then with that, with our webinar being mainly around document generation for Salesforce, I'd like to ask Tom to take over and just tell us why document generation for Salesforce is so special.
Yeah, thank you very much, Blesser. So one thing to really point out off the back of this particular slide is when we're talking about document generation, specifically for Salesforce, we take all of the steps that you see to my right and we bundle all of that together into one thing which we call a document package. So let's dive into a bit more about what specifically for document generation for Salesforce makes it special. Well, it's a solution that's built specifically for Salesforce in mind. It has a very easy setup and configuration. It automatically respects your Salesforce data model, so there isn't any need to work with complex reports or queries. And it really takes into account the ethos of Nintex, the Nintex platform in general, as a low-code, no-code solution. So everything's done with click configuration. Then we have the fact that it's a completely native management. So everything that you want to be able to experience in terms of configuring the package and deploying the package and interacting with it, all of that is 100% native within Salesforce, so you never actually have to leave that experience. We're completely lightning ready, and later on in this webinar I'll be showing you a little bit of the future of the product and how we're going to be fully utilizing that lightning experience moving forward. And then other features such as Excel as middleware, which really offer you the ability to supercharge your documents with the power of Excel, bringing in advanced calculations, advanced VLOOKUPs, and advanced document generation scenarios that can really improve the dynamic nature of the documents that you create. Not to mention a few other things, such as being able to connect out to the wider Nintex platform if you're looking to automate and go down the route of workflow automation and tie together your business processes closer to Salesforce, bringing in aspects from other areas such as SharePoint, for example. And it's good to know that all of this is deployable through an app which you can gain access to today through the AppExchange. So all you need to do is go ahead and download that as a trial onto your Salesforce, and you'll be able to get started with some free document generation allotments today. And really the most important thing from our perspective is that there are three main aspects that we like to focus on, and that's the case of any data that you have in your Salesforce environment can be mapped to any type of document and then brought into context to whichever delivery method makes sense for that particular use case that you have in mind. And when we talk about use cases, well, we've seen customers across a myriad of different sectors really make the most of the document generation functionality. We don't necessarily worry too much about what the document is. As you can see by the range of industries that are creating different types of documents, from government creating application processing, case and claims management, to legal vendors using it for contracts, terms and conditions, and then marrying it up maybe with some e-sign vendor in order to go and collect those legal signatures so that it can be ensured that a contract has been handled appropriately. So with customers and use cases in mind, Will, would you be able to tell us a little bit about some of the customers that are using the product?
Of course. So as Tom mentioned, we do touch such a large range of different industries with Nintex DocGen for Salesforce, and I think this slide is just a testament to that. Just on that slide alone, you can see manufacturing, retail, healthcare, financial services, tech, not-for-profits, logistic companies, and even government examples as well. Not on this slide, but particularly in America and Australia, we have government departments as customers. And this is just a small sample. We've got over 2,000 DocGen customers. And you can see some of the case studies on the website. You mentioned earlier the marrying of different systems, for example, Cartelligent up there. They were users of Salesforce and DocuSign for over 10 years, and they didn't really have a method of pulling those together. We gave them that method, and now they use Nintex DocGen for Salesforce to automate 90% of their documents company-wide, which is pretty impressive, and that's a case study that you can find on our website. Yamaha as well, impressive name. Previously, their legal contracts were taking them up to 4 weeks to produce. We kind of put that down to just a few seconds. So they really appreciated that. You can see a quote over to the left of the slide from Mike Mercado over there, and strategic growth as well, a bit of a different example. They increased case study production by 300% through automated document generation. So that's just a few examples. There are lots more on the website. Go and take a look. I think this slide just goes to show such a wide range of industries and different use cases that are possible with Nintex DocGen for Salesforce. So with that, I just want to go back to the slide Tom showed earlier. Just give everyone a chance to think about what use cases matter to you. Which documents would you automate if you could do it today? So I'll just give everyone 30 seconds. Use this slide as inspiration if you want. Just post in the question pane or the chat pane which documents would you automate. So I'll just give you 30 seconds to do that.
Okay, so looking at some of the responses that we received, a lot of focus around things like quote documents and sales-based documents, as well as some examples in terms of letters. You know, these are something that we regularly see, and actually today we're going to be looking at a demonstration of putting together documentation, but mainly focused around the different languages that could be pulled in, and being able to dynamically generate these types of documents whilst taking into account the language of the recipient in question. So, Palesa, would you be able to dive into that demo for us?
Thanks, guys, for handing over. Can you also verify if you can see my screen?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
All right, awesome. Just as Will and Thomas explained, you know, our document generation for Salesforce is an easy-to-use tool that works within the context of Salesforce. So the demo that I've prepared today is mainly around being able to take some of that Salesforce data and actually generate a document. So if you look at my screen over here, I've got a couple of opportunities, and then as you can see, each of them are in different stages. I'll get into that a little bit later. But if I go ahead and I click on my first opportunity, This is going to open in Salesforce. As you can see, we're using the Lightning experience. And if you look at the details for the opportunity as well, we've got a bit of metadata in this. So we know who the opportunity owner is, what the account is, the primary contact. And if I scroll just a little bit down, you can see that we have options such as the language for that opportunity. So if I go to my right-hand side quickly, I can then, for example, for this particular opportunity over here, generate a document. So if I scroll further down and I select my document package, so remember the document package has been configured to take some of that data, apply to a template using conditions and rules, and allow me to choose how I want to deliver it. So for the sake of this demo, what I'm going to do is that I'm not going to specify a contact, and then I'm just going to go ahead and download this document as a PDF. So if I run this document package, what happens in the background is all the configuration that I've set to this document package will compile this information. And then after this is run, I'll just show you what output document looks like, as well as what the template looks like side by side. And then I'll just run a second one in a different language, just to give you an example. So it's finalizing my document package. As you can see, it's gone ahead. It's picked up that I've selected English. And then if I click on my proposal and quote document over here, it's downloading. And then I open that. You see that I've got my PDF. So it's gone ahead and applied some of my rules. So what I'm going to do, just to give you some context on this, is I'm going to put this side by side with my document template itself. So I'm just going to open the template. And then as you guys can see here on my screen side by side, you'll notice that I've got some text with some of these tags in there. So those are the document tags that we were referring to earlier on. And then if you look at the completed document here on the left-hand side, it's been able to pull in some of my salutation, the title, as well as the billing address and the primary contact's name and last name. So if I just quickly jump back into Salesforce, let's say we're looking at the same opportunity and maybe the customer would like to have this document in a different language. So I can simply go ahead and edit that opportunity and maybe change it to German as an example. I can save it. And then what I can actually do using document generation is rerun the document package. So what it's going to do is that it's going to take the language for that opportunity, apply the correct template, which is in German, and then go ahead and generate my document in the correct language. So all of my rules in the background do run. And then later on with the second example, I'll show you another way of doing this. So now my document is generating, it's been processed. And then as you guys will immediately notice, I've got a German proposal now. And then if I click and I download that, I can go ahead and I can open it. And then as you can see, my document is being generated in German. So you guys are probably wondering how this works. Yes, Tom?
Oh, nothing from my side.
Okay. So if I go back to Salesforce, I can go into my document packages. So what literally is being presented in front of me is a list of document packages that I've pre-configured. So if we go to that specific one that I just showed you now, I'm just going to filter by name quickly, and then I'm going to go into my document package. As you can see, we presented with an interface where we can actually take some of those steps that we spoke about earlier on as to how you generate a document. So that being able to gather your data, define your templates, applying conditions and rules, and also setting your delivery options. The first thing that I'll start with is obviously with this document package, I can then reference my Salesforce data. So we've got an intuitive field tagger that's built in. And then what this allows us to do is actually map some of our Salesforce fields to the document. So just to take you guys a little bit back, if you remember my templates, I had some of these tags inserted in there. So this is where I get that data. And then we've taken this a step further as well to allow you to look up an account, maybe to simulate that generation of that document and ensure that your data is correct. So if I click on this little magnifying glass as an example, what I'll be presented with will be some of my live Salesforce data. So let's say we select Pacific Northwest Incorporated, and just to simulate this, we can actually see which tag will return which value from our Salesforce system. So I can just use this just to test to ensure that I'm getting the correct data. And then if I just jump back into the config as well, some of the things that you can manipulate with this is the output file name. So remember, with my generated documents, I had the language first and then proposal quote and the date that this was generated. And then you can obviously tie this to more than just an opportunity. So if you need to generate a document based on a lead or maybe on a contact, you can do that. And then if you scroll further down, you see that over here, we have a section where we can actually put in all of our different templates. So for this example, what I've literally done is I've taken all of my document templates per language, and then what I've done in the settings as well is I've told document generation for Salesforce to only load the correct template when the language is equal to the language that's selected. So that's how I'm doing the dynamic generation. But you guys might be wondering, what if I've got more languages than this and it's a little bit complex? But I'll show you an example later. The other things that you can do with this is you can obviously set security. So remember, this is in the context of Salesforce. You can configure that. And then also to mention, you can go ahead and manipulate your delivery options. So do you want to be able to download it? Do you want to email it to a customer, for example, or maybe send it for digital signatures using one of our connectors like Adobe Sign? And then the other thing that you can do in here, which mainly relates to how you can gather your data, is you can go ahead and look up some of your Salesforce information. So if I look at the contact, which the document was addressed to, I can go in and I can click on that relationship. And if I edit it, I can go ahead and choose or manipulate how I want to get to that data. So as you can see, I'm telling Salesforce to literally pick up the contact for that opportunity. So I'm just going to go ahead and cancel that for now and just go back to my DDP and explain a few more things. So if I just go back to my document package again, some of the last things that you can do with this is you can do things like insert updates. So if you have a scenario where maybe, for example, there's some sort of calculation that happens when the document is generated and you want to push that back into the Salesforce record, you can do that.
So, Palesa, with this particular example, I can see that you're using a template file for every single language. Is there a way in which we can manage that more centrally?
Yes, that is a great question, Tom. You can achieve that. So we have a technique within document generation where you can use Excel as middleware. So what I'm going to do for the guys quickly is just show them an example where I've done that. So if I go back into my document packages, and then just to go back to some of the filters that I have over here, you'll see that I've got a document package called Contract Demo Nintex. As you can see, it's also tied to an opportunity. And then you'll notice that you can also add a filter. I'll explain that in a little bit as well. So if you open this document package as an example, you'll notice that I've got far less document templates in there. And the reason for that is that I've decided to use Excel as a mechanism of inputting data in one particular language and outputting it to a different language as an example. So if you look at this first file that I've got over here, it's literally an Excel spreadsheet. I've opened this already. And then what I can actually do with document generation is tell tell document generation for Salesforce to apply the correct language for each of these English titles over here. So as you can see, I've got a couple of languages in there. I've got English, German, Bengali, Chinese, Portuguese, and so forth. So what actually happens at runtime when I generate this document is that the document generation for Salesforce, it's going to go ahead and maybe take some of my titles. So let's say it's going to pick up German as the language title, that opportunity. And then for each of these titles, it's going to return that title in its equivalent language. And then another thing that you can do as well is make use of what we call component groups as well as components. So component groups are pretty much reusable text, images, which can be used across multiple document packages. So the advantage of that is that if you make any changes to a component or component group, it can be replicated across all of your document packages, making use of that. So if I scroll further down into my document package, you'll see we've got a section over here for component groups. And then if I just go ahead and go to my entire list, I can view all of my component groups. So let's say I want to view some of my terms and conditions in German. I can open that component group. And then as you can see, we get an intuitive and graphical way of getting some of our information in German. So component groups, how I like to explain it as well, is you can literally go ahead and insert content in there and do things like indenting. So I'll just show you an example of that now. So if I go ahead and let's define a new component group, and let's say I want to call this component exclusions. Luckily, it's the same word in German. I did a bit of research on this. I can go ahead and insert either static content by typing out there, or I can even go as far as referencing some of my Salesforce content using the field tagger. So if I wanted to insert reusable information, I could just literally copy and paste that. But if I go ahead and I create my exclusions group, which already exists, what I can actually do for this is I can choose where I want this to appear. So let's say I want it to appear right after cancellations. So I can literally just drag and drop that. And if I need this to be indented, what I'll do is I'll just move it over there. So indentation is having the ability of having a section, maybe like section 1, and then the next following sections that are indented will be 1.1, 1.2, and so forth. And then if I'm happy with my components, I can go ahead and save it, or I can clone it. So what I'll do for you guys is just run a document package against an opportunity and show you how this works in action. So if I go back to my opportunities quickly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this demo over here where the stage is in negotiation or review, which is quite important because I've configured my document package to only run when it's in negotiation or review. So if I click on negotiation or review, just similar to my first example, I get details on that opportunity, who the primary contact is, what the language is, and so forth. So if I scroll further down, what I'm going to do for you guys is I'm just going to change this language into German. I'm going to save that opportunity. And then I can go ahead and I can run my document package. So if I select my document package, I can scroll down to my contract demo Nintex. And then I'm just going to select none as a contact. And I'd like to download it as a PDF just to speed things up. And then what's actually happening in the background is that it's going to incorporate some of my Excelis middleware where it's going to translate those titles for my documents, as well as make use of component groups to apply the applicable sections to that document. So things like the definitions, the terms and conditions, and all of that will be displayed in German in this example. So it's busy processing at the moment. And then everything looks good. And then now I can go ahead and open that contract. It's just downloaded. And if I go ahead, as you can see, there's my contract using some of my components. So all of the definitions, as well as terms and conditions are in German, and so forth. And then what I'd like to show you guys is obviously with component groups, as you've guessed, your document template doesn't look as complicated as it would if you had multiple templates in different languages. So what I'm going to do here on the right-hand side is open the document template with component groups just to give an idea as to how that is being applied. So if I open my document template, as you can see, I've told it that, well, include the terms and conditions in German, in English, or in Spanish, or whatever language that I may be using. And what happens at runtime is that it's going to apply the applicable components group. And then I've also made use of the native features as well, what can reference any of my Salesforce data.
Okay, thank you very much, Palessa, for that demo. I think it really highlights the number of different ways in which you can approach the challenge of translating within any kind of document generation. From having the ability to dynamically pick the different templates themselves to entire groups of smaller components that are being dynamically selected across the document package. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do is actually jump into the next demonstration, which is going to be a look at some of the new stuff that came out of our Dreamforce presentation. So before we do that, are there any questions in regards to the demonstration you've seen today? Okay, so what I'd like to show you today is basically the new design experience that we have put together to really make the most out of Lightning within the Salesforce environment. So you've all seen, thanks to Palessa's demo, what the activity of putting together a document package looks like. So what I'm going to show you today is how that's going to look moving forward. Now, it's worth noting that this is in early beta still. It's still a work in development. So any feedback, any thoughts on this, then feel free to let us know your comments. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into creating a new document package. So to start off, what we're going to do is we're going to make a document package around a particular sales quote. So what we want to do is we want to be able to pull in information from an opportunity, pull in the related opportunity data, maybe what the customer's actually buying, as well as information about the customer themselves. So we'll start off by naming the package whatever we need. So in this case, I'm going to call it customer quote summary. And then we're going to specify a particular starting object. So in this case, I know I want to be able to run this on opportunities. Now, what that'll do is it will then allow me to specify a particular type. In this case, it's a type of report. I'm reporting on the particular Salesforce object, so I'm going to pick reporting. And I can also then define some other things, like if I require a particular contact selected, or add extra description to help end users from understanding what this particular package is about. I can then specify my deployment and look to move on to the next stage. Now, before I do that, you'll notice that here I have a wizard-like experience showing me the steps that I need to take whilst putting together a document package, and this will remain dynamic throughout. So the first step is to set up the data. Now, before I can really interact with the data and the relationships, I need to establish what I've already set. So here I've already set that it's related to the opportunity, so I'm going to click Save. And what that does is it goes and fetches a bunch of different relationships for me from the get-go. We already know that I'm going to want information about the opportunity, and I already know that I'll want some information below that for the products related to it. And then I'll probably also need to bring in some of the top-level objects like account or contact, and bring in some of those properties into my overall document. And it does it in a much better way than we've done previously, where it actually visualizes that data relationship, which are being referred to as the relationship forest at the moment, work name in progress. So what we'll do is we're going to add some new relationships. Whereas before, you would just add a new relationship line and it might not be as accessible for the end user. Here you understand immediately that you're adding a child record from underneath the opportunity. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And what we want to do is interact with all of the child objects underneath the opportunity. So this is what I get in the list. Now, what I'm going to do is go and grab the quote. That's the information that I need. It's related by the opportunity ID, and then I'm going to say what type of repetition I want. So this is one of the great things with any kind of relationship. I can set up a particular repeat option so that, for example, for every quote that I receive back, I want to have a new table for each of those. If there's no new records, if there's no records within that particular quote object, then I would delete the table or keep the table depending on how you want to display it. In this case, we'll just save that. Now, I'm going to need a little bit more information. I'm actually going to need more detail about those individual quotes. So I'm going to add another child to that particular object. Now, in this case, I want the quote line item, so I can actually get the individual properties of those quotes. That's associated by the quote ID. Now, because I've already set up the parent relationship with a table repeat, the only option within a table is to create rows. So for every line item, it's going to create a new row within that table. So I'll go ahead and I will save that. Now, once that's done, I can go ahead and move over to the next stage. So we're going to go into the documents. So here I can explore all of my libraries and various storage locations that I have associated to my Salesforce org. One thing that's worth noting is that we no longer have a reliance on Adobe Flash here. For some of our more experienced users out there, I'm sure you'll be very pleased without having to deal with as many browser compatibility issues if the browser isn't running Flash. So this is a great change. So I'm able to go in and explore through those documents, go through to my document templates, and jump between my different libraries. So here I'm going to go ahead and grab my template, quote summary, and that will get added to the document package. I can come into here, and even though the template file will forever remain quote summary as I want it to within the context of my file system, I'm still able to come here and rename this to a more, I suppose, process-driven name in terms of what this template is doing, so that if some end user who is just looking at it from a business process point of view, they understand what that is doing at that particular point. So here I'm actually going to name it to customer quote summary. And that will just remain with that name in this particular package. I can then specify other things. So if I wanted to interact with the conditionality that Palessa showed earlier, if I wanted to just have this document as an option to be included, then I can do so. In this case, we're just going to say always, and then we're going to save. Now, it's also worth noting at the bottom, you're able to add ad hoc files. So ad hoc files will allow you to specify whether or not the person generating the document, can they add additional attachments to the greater message that's going out? Do you want to bring in some chatter files or Salesforce files to go alongside the dynamically generated document? So you can allow for that. And once you've done that, you can move on to the next stage, which is delivery. So within delivery, I'm able to specify the output name, just like Palessa showed you earlier. If I wanted to access the field tagger, I can do so. So I can grab the field tagger and go in and grab an appropriate name to bring into my output file name. So here maybe I want to have the account name followed by customer quote summary. Go ahead and save that. And then we get into the delivery options. So much like Palessa showed you before, I can jump into the delivery options and set that up. So here I'm going to just create one. I'm going to create a very simple one just for downloading. So Tom's download. And then I can specify maybe how I want this document to be generated. Do I want a single PDF? Do I want to split those out? Maybe receive the original file types as well if I'm using a mix of different file types. But in this case, I think we'll stick to single PDF. And then you can go into other elements of the delivery option if you need, from automatically process and send to on-screen and preview before sending. In this case, we'll set it up to run automatically. And you could add multiple delivery options. You can have different combinations of them. You aren't sort of stuck to one of each type. You could have 3 or 4 different download options for each of those different document output types if you required. And some of the eagle-eyed amongst you would have spot on the side our little wizard lightning component actually flipped over. And what it switched into is the lightning component that you're used to on the actual Salesforce records themselves. So you're able to actually jump in and test your document package immediately from this configuration page. So you're no longer having to deal with any page load, you're not having to switch between different views, you're not having to go back to some test records in order to test your documents. And you'll also notice that even though I specified one delivery option called Tom's Download, we also now retain a test download option as a delivery option to help designers for testing any document package at any particular point in time. So here I'm going to click download and we're going to run that document package. And whilst that's running, you'll notice down the bottom that I have access to a section called visibility. And this is basically our new set security configurator. So here I'm able to actually go in and add further visibility if I need to. And notice how my configuration has no impact on that test run document above me. I'm able to interact, make changes, add particular users if I need to based on my own Salesforce profiles or whatever it may need to be. I can add them, I can remove them as I require. So now I've adjusted that visibility. Let's open up the document and we can have a look at how that's come through. So I'm going to pull up the document, and here I've got two tables that have come through for each of my quotes, and then the line items within that. If we contrast that to the template, so we'll bring it up side by side, zoom out a little bit, you can see the various tags throughout the document. So you can see here, I actually only have one table. All it's going to be looking for is that quote table start, and then for every quote that is against the record, it's going to create a new table. And then here you've got the quote line item start. So for every line item, it's going to create a new row within each table. So you can build up very complex documents very quickly by using these a mix of different relationships and different repeat types to present the information in the way that you want. So that was a quick overview of the new Lightning design experience for document generation for Salesforce. As I said, it's still early on in beta, but we'll be hopefully bringing out new features and functions and more information about it as we move forward. So at this point, I'll hand back to Will to close out the webinar.
Cool, thanks for that, Palessa and Tom. Really great. So just kind of next steps. Please, if you're interested in getting more information or a personal demo, then email the email info@nintex.com. That's up on your screens at the moment, or you can go to nintex.com/schedule a demo. Alternatively, go straight to the AppExchange and just try it out yourself. Just have a play around on the tool. That's the best way of learning, right? And we have run out of time, so we'll skip Q&A, but if you have any questions, then put them in the survey after, and we'll be sure to get back to them as soon as possible. Okay, so that's thank you from me again, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.